I grew up in foster care. Actually, I entered the system when I was 12. I think for the most part, just parents were actively involved in their children's lives. And I saw that as a foster kid that didn't necessarily have that. I finally had the stability of a roof over my head, a place to sleep every night, 3 meals a day, etc. But watching them, I wanted to get involved in the community. And a lot of my friends said, you have to have stuff for your college applications. So I joined a program run through the YMCA called Youth in Government and really didn't understand it. And absolutely fell in love with it. It was so much fun. And it was like now I look back and it was just a different subset of people. And those were my people. And it was great. And I fell in love with government.
Hello and welcome again to another episode of Sacktown Talks. Today we're glad to be joined by Monica Miller, President of Sacramento Advisors, LLC. Monica, thanks for joining us. How's it going?
Good, thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
No worries. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself for the listeners who don't know who Monica Miller is?
Absolutely. So my name is Monica Miller. I'm the owner of a small boutique lobbying firm here in Sacramento called Sacramento Advisors. I have been the owner when I established it in 2016. So I've had the pleasure of representing clients in that capacity since then. Prior to that, I worked at a big top 10 lobbying firm here in town. And prior to that, which I loved, and they're fantastic. And
who are
they? Governmental advocates.
Okay.
Yeah, they were great.
The Governor Brothers?
The Governor Brothers and Hetty. Oh gosh, Hetty
My
hired
neighbor.
me.
Yeah.
Is she? Oh God, she's fabulous.
Great.
She's lovely. So fabulous. And then Cliff Berg, of course. So who I consider just a mentor of mine. I don't know if he appreciates that, but I certainly do. I think he's fantastic. But yeah, anyhow, so I was there for a little over 17 years and wanted to dabble.
Wow.
Yeah, a little bit. Wanted to dabble in more nonprofit work and kind of take that opportunity to represent clients that didn't have a voice at the table. And so left and did that with their blessing. And to this day, still work very collaboratively with them, especially Cliff. So, which is great. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. Like we're getting more and more elected members who have run nonprofits.
Yes.
And, I had the pleasure of talking with Stephanie Wynn yesterday.
Yeah.
She was talking about all the work it took to run the nonprofit. And you're always out there fundraising and you're dealing with, all the issues a normal business runs.
Yes,
without
exactly.
the upside.
Exactly. Without the profit.
Right. But you feel good about it.
You do.
Can you kind of tell us about some of the nonprofits you're working with and kind of some of the stuff you're working on?
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the nonprofits that I represent currently are Alzheimer's Los Angeles, Alzheimer's Orange County, Alzheimer's San Diego. And they are not the Alzheimer's Association. They are separate and apart, do good work for their communities, raise money locally, do education and support services for their caregivers, support for their clients, such as community-based adult services, just really trying to be there. Helped Alzheimer's Los Angeles and San Diego helped create entities with working with their counties to be able to find individuals who wander, who have a cognitive impairment, such as Alzheimer's, or individuals with autism. So, which is great, and we're trying to take that statewide. So that's been a big success of theirs. Additionally, I represent on a consulting side National Council of Jewish Women, LA chapter, and we're just granted an award to do a guaranteed income program, which is similar to back in the day. It's assistance for individuals. We are focused on pregnant people and individuals that are pregnant with diabetes. As you know, a lot of women do get gestational diabetes, and so we're focused on helping them. And it gives them a monetary grant. It's a 12-month program on a monthly basis. It's a stipend that really helps get them to that starting line, which is great. There was a pilot done in Stockton, which was very successful, and this is a pilot we have at the statewide level. 7 grantees were awarded, and so we'll see. So that's great. I also work on residential care facilities for the elderly, represent the California Association of Nurse Anesthetists, and California Naturopathic Doctors Association. So I do some healthcare, and then Alameda County. So, and do most of their social services work. So,
just hearing about all those clients you work for, you must work and focus a lot on the state budget. Is that right?
Indeed, I do. Yes.
So we just, I guess, kind of wrapped up the budget.
Kind of.
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit. Much work to be done there. So, we'll
Enough
see.
to keep the paychecks rolling, right?
Indeed.
Yeah.
So I get it. Everyone wants to get paid and they do work very hard. So got to give them that. I think it's a challenge having done this for a little over 25 years, seeing those days prior to this constitutional issue of having to get this budget done so they could get paid. I just remember, even in college, when I first moved to Sacramento, my freshman year in college, the budget did not get resolved. And I was a student at Sac State living on, Cal grants and waiting for those to come through. And I couldn't get my bus pass, so I couldn't go to work. So lots of challenges because they didn't have a state budget. So, things to the outside world started to shut down for people like me. So, and much like we were going to almost see at the federal government level. So challenges. I think they have a lot of work. I think a lot of them were not here during the 2008, 2009 Great Recession. So lessons learned from that. I appreciate that I went through that with my clients. So I'm hoping that I can help them pivot as we try and figure this out. And we'll see what October 15th brings in as well.
Yeah. I was talking to a legislator yesterday about the budget, and they're like, well, second biggest budget in history of California.
Exactly. Yeah.
So things aren't too dire. Kind of like, how is it working with this budget and kind of, in comparison to last year and the giant surplus?
$100 billion.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, and I like the way Department of Finance has framed it. We're doing a correction. Mm-hmm. But what does that look like? And is it really a $32 billion deficit, or is it just 32 out of the $100 billion?
Right.
But then what does that mean for the individuals and nonprofits, for example, that were allocated funds during the $100 billion budget? Did they encumber those funds? Did they get them, et cetera? So lots of challenges for the legislature for sure. And for advocates to make sure that the legislature, with 30% new members coming in, really understand that and appreciate it, because they have their own challenges, right? Their own constituencies that they need to represent. So, and coming in, I can't imagine coming in and facing a budget deficit like right out the gate.
Right.
So we'll see.
So, a lot of, nonprofit work and budget work involves pilot projects, right?
Yes.
We're going to test this. We're going to test it out.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about some of the pilots you've worked on recently that you've got funding for that have been successful?
Yeah. Well, obviously the guaranteed income
Mm-hmm.
pilot program that we were successful at getting, just to demonstrate, did in fact it work. So we have the funding on the ground. So it's a one-time investment from the state. And so I think that there's, no risk, right? They put the money out there. If it works, great. Can the individuals who are part of the pilot get it off the ground? That always presents challenges. Was it enough funding? So because as you know, inflation and dealing with issues related to that. So I think that in and of itself will present some challenges. So, but again, it's a small risk on the state. They invest the money, and if it works, great. They come back and hopefully get it extended. If it was successful, then they have the data to demonstrate it's successful. But, talking about it recently with the Adult Protective Services pilot that was done, there were so many counties in it that the data came in and it just didn't make sense.
Right.
Because every county is different, and we have to recognize that LA County is going to be different than Mono.
Totally.
Yeah, and how do they work with their senior population? How do they work with their foster youth? So how do they get those monies out the door?
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see how we get through the next, I don't think it's going to be this year only, but the next few years with this budget deficit.
Right.
So,
a question, lobbyists always get, or people always get, is like, how did you become a lobbyist? Kind of what is the pathway? Can you kind of tell us about your life before you were, registered?
Yes, absolutely. So I actually, I grew up in foster care. Actually, I entered the system when I was 12, and I was in the Central Valley, small town called Visalia, just 34 miles south of Fresno. Had grown up or spent the first 12 years of my life in Orange County, so kind of a bigger city, to go to Visalia. And I was fortunate that the high school that I ended up going to had a lot of kids that were very well cared for by their parents. And I want to say affluent, but I don't know that that's necessarily the way. I mean, some definitely were, but I think for the most part, just parents were actively involved in their children's lives. And I saw that as a foster kid that didn't necessarily have that. I finally had the stability of, a roof over my head, a place to sleep every night, 3 meals a day, et cetera. But watching them, I wanted to get involved in my community. And a lot of my friends said, you have to have stuff for your college applications. And I thought, college? Oh my gosh. So I joined a program run through the YMCA called Youth in Government and really didn't understand it. And absolutely fell in love with it. It was so much fun. And it was like now I look back and it was all the super smart, geeky people in high school that didn't necessarily fit well in the community that played football. I mean, maybe they were football players, but that just wasn't there. They weren't the cheerleaders necessarily. Not that that was anything wrong, but it was just a different subset of people. And those were my people. So, and it was great. And I fell in love with government and ran for office. I lost, but I ran for office. And thought that's what I want to do when I grow up. I want to work in government. I want to work in the state capitol. Got into Sacramento State. Wanted to become a page because I thought, what a better way to get to know the legislative process. Deficit hit under Governor then Pete Wilson, and so page program was eliminated. So I thought, okay, take a year, reassess. Started doing internships and interned for State Treasurer Kathleen Brown. And then when she declared her candidacy for governor, was able to intern on that, which was fantastic. She, as you're aware, lost.
Right.
And so then I thought, okay, what next? And I interned for Senator Diane Watson, who was first African-American woman elected in California to the state Senate. Second woman, but first African-American woman. Roseanne Buich was the first woman. Interned for her, was fortunate enough to get a job right before I graduated. So started working for her, graduated. Monday was a holiday. Tuesday morning, I started work in her office, which was fantastic. And then did work with the Democratic National Committee, did a lot of campaign work here in California with the California Democratic Party, and just really loved it. Loved the party politics, loved working for Diane Watson because she was so engaged in everything. Got to know then President Pro Tem Bill Lockyer's staff, took some vacation time in parts of California that I had never seen to walk precincts for individuals, and just really loved it. But with term limits, it was a little challenging to know you were going to have a steady paycheck. And so I found that went to work for the Assembly for a while and then left the Assembly and went to work for a lobbying firm and shortly thereafter started with Governmental Advocates. So, and then stayed there for...
What year? What year was that?
Oh, gosh. I started with Governmental Advocates in 99.
99, okay.
Yeah, I think it was 99. So a while ago.
So was that the first lobbying firm you worked for? Or?
I worked for another firm very shortly. She's no longer around. It was Griffin and Associates.
Okay.
So very shortly. Her issues just didn't align with my political views, which was a challenge for me. There was no room for growth. I think she was closer to retirement. She loved doing this, so she wasn't quite ready, but I just felt like...
As we all do.
Exactly. It's a great career. Everyone loves it.
Lobbying? Right.
Yeah. So anyhow, and she was great. She taught me a lot, which was great. But then Cliff Berg approached me with Governmental Advocates and said, are you interested in coming to work for us? And I said, sure. I'd love to talk to you about it, and did, and was there for a long time and absolutely loved it and grew and learned so much. And then, as I mentioned, in 2016, opened Sacramento Advisors.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's amazing. So you were a foster child.
Yes.
12 years old.
Yes.
Just moved to Visalia.
Yes.
Which is one of the most remarkable communities I've ever been around.
It's fabulous.
I used to stay at the Marriott there for work.
Yeah.
I remember going to the Starbucks there and somebody stole the tip jar.
Oh.
And the whole store chased after the guy.
Oh my goodness.
There was like 20 people.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, you would not see that in a big city.
No. Visalia, I don't think I had the appreciation when I was, when you're in high school. And I came from Orange County and I was a little bit of a wild child before I got into foster care. Then I cleaned my act up because I was like, I don't want to go to juvenile hall. So that was sort of the threat. Like, get your act together.
I don't even have that anymore.
I know, right? But still, yeah. I mean, anyhow, but it was still the threat that hung over you. Right. So in any event, it just is such a supportive community, and they support their kids and they lift them up. And There were definitely some parents that were a little hesitant because I was a foster kid, and they were like, maybe you're not the type of person we want our children to interact with, which was unfortunate that they were short-sighted, but I think it was just a lack of education and understanding, and also not understanding that it wasn't my fault. I didn't do anything wrong. It was something that, my father had passed away and my mother just wasn't equipped to handle a child. So unfortunately, she was young. She was a young mother and didn't really know what to do with me, or herself, quite frankly. So, in any event, and just really, it's a great community.
Yeah, so, definitely. So you talked about kind of like this young legislators program.
Yeah.
Is that the one? Does that still exist? Like every Valentine's Day,
that's it.
You see all these young kids up here.
That's it. It's a fantastic program. It really brought to me, because Visalia is pretty, we have a reform worker community, which again, I didn't understand as a youth what all of that meant. But it's a pretty white, my school was pretty white, so very white. So to see the diversity of so many different regions and people, just the way they thought, and it just was so interesting to me. And I'm a sponge. I love to learn off of people. And so that was really something that just really drew me in, is just the diversity and meeting people from, Contra Costa, and the big YMCA at the time was San Ramon. That was like the biggest YMCA. I mean, they brought like 65 kids. So, and just seeing the diversity there. And we did 2 separate weekends in San Luis Obispo. And I forget the name of the camp, but there's an Army camp there, like a reserves camp there. And so we stayed there, and these awful buildings that had no heat, and it was always freezing. Yeah. And you couldn't even blow your hair dry because the electricity would go out. But you had this camaraderie, and it was like going to a convention for kids, right? A statewide convention, political convention. And then you get your designee of what role you're going to play in youth and government. And then you come up here, and I know it's since diversified a lot because of the growth, but you come up here, and we stayed at the Hyatt. I'd never stayed at a hotel like that before. And you use the state capitol. You actually get to use, it's the only program still to this day, I believe, that uses the actual assembly floor. So legislators, as you know, go home for the weekend, and it's a 3-day weekend, so we're on the floor all weekend. So debating bills, and we all have to introduce our own bills as a delegation, and we have to write them. We have a lobbying component. We have, from what I understand, they have a podcast now. They had a full media component if people were interested in that aspect. So it's the full, just all of it.
That's
and
really
it's
cool.
Still in existence. I actually ran the program for Sacramento for a number of years, and then just due to work schedules and trying to graduate from college, had to step away from it. So.
The foster care system is something that's always been talked about. A lot of kids go straight from foster care to homelessness now, kind of with this homelessness kind of crisis going on, and kind of all the funding being taken care of it. Kind of, where's the foster care system now, and kind of what can be done to kind of improve it? The age-old question. The
age-old question, right? I mean, I think some improvements have been made, such as aging out at 21 now instead, because I aged out my November of my senior year in high school. And I thought, oh my goodness, where am I going to go?
Wow, because under Obamacare now, you can stay on your parents' health care until 26, right?
Yes.
So in foster care, it was 18.
Yes, you're out. And and so that was some challenges for me that I hadn't anticipated. I don't know what we do about the homelessness, but I think that one thing, and I know they're trying to fix it, and one thing that I would hope, and most often, I mean, you have children, you give your parents, or you give your children the ability to understand, like, how to manage money, how to have a good work ethic, how to, study hard in school. And if maybe a 4-year college isn't for you, what is there a trade school option? What do you want to do? Right. Do you want to travel for a year? Not ideal, but, everyone needs a gap year, right? And if they can do it when they're young and they like staying in hostels and they don't care, go for it. But you have that support system. You have someone who you can call at 5:00 in the morning if you get in trouble. You stayed out too late, God forbid, which this did not happen to me, but you were arrested or, whatever. Foster kids don't have that necessarily. Right. So I actually worked on a foster care with a foster care board here in Sacramento, Sierra Forever Families, and they have a program called Wendy's Wonderful Kids, where they try to pair you up with an adult who is that adult for you. You can call them at 3:00 in the morning if you've gotten yourself into a bad situation. But ultimately, a lot of kids fall through the cracks. Kids get, moved from family to family to family. So there's no stability there for them. There's no one place that they can call home. And there's no place during college that they can go to for the holidays. Dorms shut down. So if they have an apartment, housing prices are crazy. They're living with, I lived in college, 2-bedroom apartment with 4 roommates. So, because that's what we could afford. So we shared rooms and it was fine. We were young. We didn't care. But it was affordable, and that's not really affordable anymore. So, and a lot of people are reluctant, credit ratings and how do you rent an apartment and who teaches you how to do all of those things. So that's a big issue. And I know that there is some legislation moving through the legislature right now to try and address that, but I don't know how. And getting rid of the group homes, I think, is a good idea. However, we don't have the capacity at the single family home level. We don't have enough foster parents trained and ready to take kids. A lot of people are interested in foster to adopt, but they're concerned about the reunification process. So if they bond with a child or a baby, and the biological parent or grandparents come back into the situation and try to then, stake claim to that child, what happens then? Because then you've bonded with this child. We see it happen all the time. So there's a lot of challenges in the foster care system, and funding. Is there appropriate funding? How do kids pay for college? College is so expensive now.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Like unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. So a lot of challenges. And I was lucky, I think. I was actually talking with a senator who has legislation moving through the legislature right now, and had said, I was so lucky because I had so many people who were looking after me. And she was like, and she brought such a good perspective to me, is you weren't lucky, you brought yourself here. And I appreciated that and really took that to heart. But I always reflect back on who helped me along the way.
Right.
So going to buy prom tickets, because I still tried to do the normal things that kids do, going to buy prom tickets my senior year. And one of the administrators saying to me, no, someone took care of those for you. And I was like, who? And they're like, well, we're not going to tell you. It's anonymous. And I'm okay. And then when I was applying to college, I went to, I guess it's called the FAFSA now, or FAFSA, and we didn't have that. So I went to the seminar and I'm like, how do I fill out grant applications?
Oh, the FAFSA, yeah.
FAFSA, yeah, whatever it's called anyhow. But yeah, how do I fill out grant applications? And my school counselors were amazing. And so they walked me through how to do it, and just had a lot of people helping me along the way, which made a big difference and got me, a little birdie out of the nest.
Right.
So, but it was definitely, Hillary Clinton says it takes a village. It took a village to get me there.
Right.
So, but there weren't a lot of foster youth in that high school in particular. So I think that, and I was also pretty studious, pretty committed to, sports and extracurricular activities. I was on the school newspaper. I was their business editor for many years and raised money and did youth in government and was on the swim team and tried to do all the things that would look good on a college application. I worked full time while doing all of this. Didn't
Where'd
drive.
You work?
I worked, oh my gosh, where didn't I work? I worked at a Bob's Big Boy, which is great. I was a hostess. I worked at a place called Chili Billy's, which is, I don't know if it's still there, in downtown Visalia. It's a little like a stand that hot dogs, hamburgers, and ice cream.
Right.
So, and I worked at a card store, no longer around, called Hatches. It was independently owned. Where else did I work? I worked for my high school English teacher's husband was a physician in town, and they hired me to go in the basement and organize all their files, which was great because they paid me really well. They fed me lunch. It was fantastic. So, and I'm sure they needed the help, but I think it was more like, we can't give you money, but we can pay you a lot of money to do this. And I just squirreled that money away. And then I was the pilot for the independent living program. It was myself and a young man. And my social worker for that, Joyce Bajorjian, who I don't know if she's still alive. We kept in touch for many years after she retired. But she had realized that my my father had passed away when I was 12, which sort of started all of this. And I was getting SSI benefits from him. And when I went into the foster care system, they were able to just utilize that to pay me. So I was kind of a free ride. I didn't know any of this, but she went to a conference and learned about this. And so she was able to, unbeknownst to me, siphon that money off and put it into a savings account for me. So when I graduated, she had me come to our office and because she'd put me into the independent living program, which was fantastic. And so we got to know each other really well through that and had me go to her office. And she handed me a check and was like, here you go. And I thought, oh my gosh. And it was a lot of money for me. And I thought, what am I going to do with this? Because I'm like 18 years old and this is a lot of money. So I put it into a CD because I thought, I need something that I can't touch, and let it mature there. And once it matured, my roommate taught me how to drive when I was 20 because I didn't know how to drive, and got my driver's license. And used part of that money to pay for school, and then took $4,000 and bought an old used Toyota Corolla. So I had a car, which I almost totaled the first week I had it. So anyhow, took a turn too quickly at Sacramento State and ended up on that median divider. Ended up driving on the median divider, popped a tire. So anyhow, I took the turn a little too quick because I was very new to driving. But yeah.
It all worked out. It's funny. We've had Christina Boss Hamilton on before and talked about it. And, they do the Capital Weekly Top 100. And I remember last year they were tweeting it out about it's all full of like lobbyists who represent these big firms and these big clients who give, millions of dollars away.
Yes.
And then, there's lobbyists like yourself, like Christina, like, escaping my name now, but other ones who you guys do the good work, right?
Yeah,
like Jennifer Fearing, right?
Jennifer Fearing. Oh,
you guys are always
love Jennifer.
Out there fighting the good
she's fabulous.
Fight. You guys don't have the big, the clients with the big money.
Yes.
Kind of, how do you guys do it? Like, how do you guys get, over there and in detention and get things done when you don't have the resources of these other lobbyists and these firms?
Yeah, I think, I think it's a matter of, we serve the same constituents that legislators serve. If you think about it, for my Alzheimer's clients, for example, they're serving the same constituents that the LA delegation, the Orange County delegation, and San Diego delegation are serving on the ground. And these programs are, with the tsunami of seniors coming in, so they care about this stuff. They care about, I've had friends whose parents were diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and unbeknownst to them, knowing the work that I do, because we've never really talked about it, they say, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And I'm like, oh, I'm going to tell you what, these are the resources that are going to be available for you. This is what you're going to do. And it's like, because they just don't know. And that diagnosis, people automatically assume it's a death sentence. It's not. There's so much life to be lived after, but you have to have respite care. You have to make sure you have, if God forbid, there's an adverse event where EMS is coming in, that they understand that the individual has a cognitive impairment. So when they're talking to them, they're getting real answers. So they're using, a family advocate. We noticed this during COVID. So, making sure that there's a patient advocate for that individual. And so those are the same issues that legislators have. They care about. We have legislators who have had, grandparents or parents who have had Alzheimer's. So they appreciate what, the governor, for example, he talks about his father.
Right.
And so I think that that's a way to reach them. I think it's a matter of building rapport with them, really trying to meet them, when you can, when they're running. Obviously, they're always understandably, the candidates are more interested in meeting people with, with PACs.
Right.
I get it. Emily's list is all about early money is like yeast. It makes the dough rise. So I think that that's important, but I think it's also important to understand who's serving your constituencies. And I think that that's really important. Nurse anesthetists, we have 7 counties that only have anesthesia providers that are CRNAs. So they don't have physician anesthesiologists because they don't want to live there. It doesn't work. It's not advantageous to them. The hospital system can't afford them, or the healthcare system locally. So talking about that, did your wife need an epidural? Did you need anesthesia services? Did you go to UC Davis? Most likely you're going to get a CRNA. So just being able to relate to them in that regard. And, there are some legislators where, and we just try to meet them where they're at. So, because they're, at the end of the day, they're lovely. And the fact that they want to come up here and do this job is amazing because it's such an ultimate service. But also they're humans too. They have families, they have children. I remember when the budget crisis hit in 08, 09, Bob Blumenfeld, budget chair, he and his wife were trying to reshuffle their lives because childcare started to become unaffordable for them. So they were living that experience. As a legislator, she ran a nonprofit. So, but he openly talked about that. So.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
You kind of mentioned some of your clients, you represent kind of this aging crisis we have coming on along.
Yeah.
And, we have these baby boomers who are aging out, and we're kind of noticing here in the lobbying corps,
yes.
a lot of lobbyists are just kind of, have died this year. And you're just kind of like, wow, since COVID, everyone's like, oh, is it COVID? Is it aging? But I think we just have this generation that's just kind of getting older. And, when people get older, people die, or people get Alzheimer's or sick. And kind of like, the demographics, like how are we set up to handle that? I remember we've talked to Adrien Nazarian about kind of like these long-term care places, and, we're just really not set up to handle it.
Yeah, definitely not equipped. There are services out there, but it's twofold. People need to know what those services are and how to access them. But we also need to make sure we're funding those services. We always call it in the aging community, I think in social services in general, it's a continuum, right? So if you cut off services over here, they're going to pop up over here. Like they're going to get the services. Like on our Medi-Cal population, a lot of those individuals are nursing home eligible, but they don't want to go into a nursing home. They want to have dignity and stay at home. I mean, who wouldn't? There was a bill that I was listening to, not a position on, but talking about wanting to ensure that they could keep loved ones at home, should that be the decision that the family makes and that they have resources. And so I think it's just a matter of looking at things differently. And quite frankly, it's more cost effective. But you have to have, the bracelets that identify them if they have Alzheimer's. Do they wander? Do you have, on all your doors and windows, do you have the chimes, which I know is really annoying. But I mean, especially small children, right? Because I have a friend whose kid wanders all the time. I'm like, hey, your kid's out in the street. And she's like, oh God. So she finally got the little door. It's one of my neighbors, and she's since moved, but they got the door chimes because she's like, my kid keeps getting out. So, and it's not that she's a bad parent. She's a great parent, but he just likes to explore the world by himself. And he's like 4. So, but we just need to make sure that we have those resources available. So, and continuing to understand the need for them. And as we say, we talk about what are our priorities as a state. And it needs to be those that can't care for themselves. So, I mean, we should have other priorities too. Obviously, I know climate change is a really big deal. We don't have air to breathe, it's in water to drink. We have, bigger problems, but we need to take care of those who can't take care of themselves and figure out our homelessness crisis and figure out our largest percentage of people who are in our point in time counts are seniors, individuals over the age of 65.
Right.
So.
No, that's right. It should be interesting to see how we address these issues.
Yeah.
Well, Monica, I know you've got a lot going on here, and you're just wrapping up the budget project. But if our listeners kind of want to figure out more about you and kind of see what you're doing, how can we find you? Yeah.
So Monica Miller, the name of my firm, Sacramento Advisors. My website address is sacadv.com. My email address is mmiller@sacadv.com. And happy to be of service if people have questions or just want to know more about programs that we're working on, or have a parent who needs some services in the Alzheimer's area, or grandparent, happy to get them to the right resources.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. So, all right.
No worries.
Okay. Have a great day. Thank you.